In this video, I'll be demonstrating how to use BattETL to load battery cycler data to the BattDB database. If you want to follow along, you'll need to make sure you have BattETL installed and the BattDB database deployed. Go ahead and check out our videos on that if you need some help with that. All right, let's get started. So I've set up a demo directory here, and within this I have battery cycler data from a Maycore cycler. I have the schedule file, the test data, and the cycle stats, and those have been exported in accordance with instructions given in the BattETL README, just so everything's formatted as we want it. I have the env file, which has the database credentials. I have sort of the example config file here that we'll kind of look at, and then a notebook we're going to use to help generate it. So to use BattETL, this is just what you have to do here. Simple enough. But the big thing we need is the config. So let's take a look at the config. The config is going to have time zone information. We're going to use that to get the Unix timestamp, data file path, stats file path, schedule file path. And then we get into our test metadata. We have the test metadata, like the name of the test, the channel, the cell manufacturer serial number, cell metadata, schedule metadata, cycler metadata. And this is the bare minimum sort of config you would need. You can include more information, and that's how the data in these tables are populated, right? So if you want to flesh out more of the cells meta table, you can include information like the manufacturer, the form factor, capacity. Those aren't strictly needed though. Those are optional. So here's the config, and rather than type in all the information here, we're actually going to use sort of the tool that's in this BattETL demo notebook, and you can find this within the examples directory of the BattETL repository. And we're going to use this to help generate it. So go to get it set up here. I have the correct environment. We've got our env file here, and we're going to use this to create the config. So this is a handy tool where I just need to give it the directory of where my battery data is, and it will automatically detect which ones are my data files, stats files, and schedule files. Let's do that. Okay, cool. It correctly identified the files. And then here we can go through and populate the specific information we want for our config. And this actually shows the optional fields as well that you can go ahead and populate with information as is useful to you. So we have, our time zone is defined. Again, in the previous step, we're setting up what our data files, stats files, and schedule files are. And let's type in our capacity. I'm going to say that's actually 3650, right? And all of this information here. Cool. Let's go with that. And this handy tool will generate that. Hit enter. And now we see here we have a config file with all of this information included. Great. So here's our config. Now let's go ahead and run BattETL on that config. Cool. So it looks like that's done. And you'll notice we're generating quite a bit of information in the logs here. So you can check this out and kind of get an idea of what's happening as you're going through. And this can be really useful, particularly if there's any sort of issues. And all the data is loaded to the database. We'll look at that in a second. But we can also work with the data here within Python. So I'm going to go test data. And here's our transform test data. Our cycle stats, all loaded up here. So we have this data we can use in Python if we want to make plots or do anything like that. And we also have the data loaded to our database. So remember how we defined these in the config? Well, now here they are loaded into the database, automatically formatted correctly, and everything's set up, and the relationships set up so that we have the correct relationships for foreign keys, such as the cell type ID is a foreign key to the primary key in the cell's meta table. We have our schedule file here, along with the schedule file actually loaded into this row here as a JSON object, so we can pull that and access that if we like. The test meta table. And you see the test ID here, 8. All of the data in our test data folder will have that associated test ID here. And this is all that raw data file. So it's as easy as that. That is how you load data into the BattDB database with BattETL. Thanks for watching.